Now let's have a look at the 12 markers. Now I know this is the one that scares people the most, but they're actually pretty good and they're a bit more like real business decisions, which I absolutely love. So the bit that scares people, of course, is because for the first time in our paper, they are level marked rather than point marked, which means you can't really mark it yourself. If we look at the mark schemes, we're not looking for individual points like previously, 1 mark for application, 1 mark for analysis. Now, the marker has to fit it to this overall fairly broad description, and therefore it becomes a bit more of an art than a science. Tricky. Let's have a look. There are 2 different styles. We're going to look at this one first. These are the ones that give you 2 distinct sections, 1 and 2, and then ask for a recommendation. So with this question, consider the advantages and disadvantages of ET starting up as an unincorporated business or a limited company. Which should Zane and Zara choose? Justify your answer. Now, the key to this is you're being asked to evaluate the highest level of skill here. Therefore, you need an opinion. You can't do anything on this. You can't get any marks really without having read the case study and feeling like you know something about Zane and Zara. You should already have had opinion on this when you read the case study. My scribbles, I already knew this was coming. That's why you shouldn't look at the question beforehand. You could go straight to reading it and you'll get the gist, because then it's going to be much more authentically your opinion when you've already thought about it. So in this one, we've got unincorporated business and we've got limited. Again, we need the knowledge. Here we go. Here's an answer I've put together. Yes, there's a lot on the page, quite a lot of pressure. They won't even really give a full mark answer. They don't want to show it because they want it to be more of an art form. But I'm fairly confident they should be able to get full marks. But I've quite a lot of writing. But we're not, again, we don't need full marks to get the 9s overall. Cambridge keep stressing that. So the structure, how do we want to do it? Well, when we've got these 2 sections, unincorporated and an unlimited, on the page, I as a marker want to see advantages and disadvantages. I want it to look nice and clear. That's why I've left this space. I want to see advantage, disadvantage, advantage, disadvantage, and then a conclusion, which I'm going to suggest has 2 parts. It's good if it has 2 parts. That's what they're really looking for, although there isn't a set recipe, as I said. So if we have a look at this, unincorporated, an advantage of Zane and Zara setting up as an unincorporated partnership is that it's quick and easy to set up. As ever, that's demonstrating knowledge, although not individually marked, but that's showing off I've got knowledge. Now, they really love this chain of analysis stuff. That is high-level skill analysis, so they want to see it here. Consequently, Zara will have more time for marketing. Now, I didn't go back and look, I just remembered it because I drew a picture. Zara was the one in charge of marketing. And therefore, chain of analysis, if she's got more time, she can raise brand awareness. So I've thrown application in right from the start. But not because I want to get that little point, but because I've got to feel it again. I've got to really understand what decisions they should make. She needs that time to raise brand awareness for a new business. Disadvantage though, a disadvantage of setting up like that is they'll have unlimited liability. Straight away knowledge, I've learnt my stuff. Chain of analysis again, consequently, if an audience member, I didn't try and put application, I was just thinking about the real business, is hurt, or ET can't pay a debt to the refreshment suppliers, I was thinking of, where do they have debts? And I remembered on that bottom part it said refreshments. The debt will be taken from Zane and Zara personally, therefore putting them at personal risk. The consequence again. So that's showing in their knowledge and it's showing detailed analysis because it's got 2 chains in for each of them. Way more than you probably need, but certainly getting the marks. Again, now I need to repeat this for limited company, advantages and disadvantages. An advantage of ET being a limited company is that it would have continuity, knowledge. I just had to know that. Consequently, if Zane or Zara no longer want to run the theatre, they could simply sell their shares to someone else. Consequence again, 2 in the analysis. Therefore, Zane and Zara are looking after their future income. Right, I'm showing that. A disadvantage is that there are costly legal formalities. Knowledge. This is full of saying, yeah, I've done my stuff, I've revised. Consequently, again, showing detailed analysis. Consequently, they would have less money to spend on the 25 part-time workers' wages. Throwing in a 25, again, because I feel it, because I've thought about it, and that's application. Showing this isn't just a general should anyone be an unincorporated or limited. This is talking about Zane and Zara. Consequently, they'd have less money to spend on their 25 part-time workers. Therefore, they would have to be lower. I didn't understand what I'd written. They would have to be lower. The wages would have to be lower. Okay, gave the chain and the consequence. Now, everything comes from this. You can't get up the top if you don't give a conclusion. They've asked you a question. And in fact, I should have said this earlier. Before you write this, you should have already thought about your firm conclusion. You should have planned this, really. I had a plan when I wrote this. So here comes the recommendation. ET should become a partnership. You start here with your conclusion. You have to state it. If not, what's going on here? If not, then you won't be answering the question. And then you won't reach level 3 in the top mark scheme if you don't cancel out the other side, because you just said some advantages and disadvantages of both sides. Although I said they could have continuity, this isn't a top priority for Zane and Zara, who seem very passionate, and their aim is to pay fair wages. They must start at their startup costs. They must keep startup costs low. Now, what I did in there, I showed that I cancelled out the other side, and they really like it when you put application into that conclusion. They don't just want a repetition of what you've said before. So if you look up here, I said they'll have to put the wages lower in the disadvantage. But now in my conclusion, I'd say, but that would really be terrible for Zane and Zara, because we know that they want to pay fair wages. So it's building on what I've said before, not just repeating on what I've said before. Now, to nail it home in this conclusion, so I'm passionately convincing the marker this is what we should do. Whereas partnerships do have personal risk. They probably rent the theatre, so they have very few large debts. So up here, I said, yeah, okay, they could have debts, and this is a problem for most businesses. But now with application to them, they probably haven't got that many debts, because it's just running a theatre company, and they probably just rent it. So they haven't bought a huge building. I don't know that, it didn't say, but it's fair to say they probably rent it. And most importantly, really nailing it, they should be unincorporated. Most importantly, as they are actors with no previous experience of running a business, it's vital they keep things simple to start with. And then they can always change to be a limited company later if they wish. Now that's full of application. You've got to remember here throughout to prove this justification. They're not just asking, should any business, like your teacher maybe have said. Now it's all about reading the case study. Generally, I much prefer the limited structure, personally. But for Zane and Zara, having read the stuff that they've told me, thought about them personally, I reckon for them, get started, you're being fairly ethical, get started as a partnership, and then hopefully swap into a limited company later if you need to. And that is passionate, and that should be hitting level 3, and I would like to think that would get full 12 marks. Even if it's not getting the full 12 marks, it's certainly getting enough to get that top 9 or A-star grade overall. The second type of 12 marker is the one that has 3 component parts here and then a conclusion. Now in this one, unlike in the previous one, they're not actually looking, you don't have to put an advantage and a disadvantage for each of these. You can, because it's an art, not a science, but I don't think that's really going to allow you to hit the marks. So they're really just looking for a developed answer here with a chain of analysis, a developed answer here, developed answer here. And then this is the bit where they're going a bit wrong, if you ask me, once again, being critical. But there's not enough space in the conclusion. Have a look at that, Cambridge, because they fully expect you to cancel 2 and strengthen the one you've got in these 3 lines. And if you don't cancel both of the others, then you can't achieve full marks. So I think this isn't enough space. But it doesn't matter, where that is the space that we've got, so we need to work on that. So let's have a look at how I've answered this one. So here on my page, we're looking for showing off knowledge, showing off application. If you haven't got the application, you're not evaluating, because this is all not about generally should you pay fair wages. This is should ET do that? And you need to think about it. You need to know your conclusion in advance. You need to feel it by reading the resource. If not, it'll be generic. It's way down the mark scheme. It just doesn't feel like it. So I've already had a think and I know where I'm going in my answer, and then this is the writing it. Paying fair wages. This means that according to Taylor's theory of motivation, showing off some knowledge, making sure they're aware I've got knowledge, the 10 actors and 2 promotion staff will be more motivated. Showing application. Again, not just for the words, but the fact I was really thinking about those. Consequently, more local people will know about the performances, because the 2 promotion staff will be doing their job better. And when they do come, they'll enjoy it more because the actors will be working better. Therefore, in the future, they can charge higher prices. Secondly, so no disadvantage there, just a chain depth of analysis of the effects, the impacts on ET. We've got to think about that question all the time. And this question is asking which will have the biggest effect on them. So looking at the effects of the next one, only buying the costumes locally produced. This means the locals will more likely come to the show as they want to see their efforts of making the costumes in action. So I was really thinking about it. I stopped when I was reading it. If you get the local people, the local seamstress making the dress, yeah, she's probably going to want to come and see the performance to see it. Okay, consequently, they will more often fill the 100 seats with application and therefore higher revenue for each show. So that is a big effect. Purchasing all refreshments from local suppliers. This means that they will need to pay a higher price, as typically it costs more to buy from ethical suppliers, showing off your knowledge, then into the chain. Consequently, their costs may increase, I don't know. And as they're in a low income area application, the audience members may not be able to pay the high prices. Therefore, less revenue from refreshment sales. Now, here's the most important part to hit these. Consequently, in conclusion, I've got to cancel out 2 sides, and I should have known which I was going to cancel right at the start. So here we go. Although I said ethical suppliers will have an effect, so I'm going to attack this point, I've got to cancel that out. In reality, they only have a maximum of 100 audience members. So ET typically have low refreshment sales anyway, so it's not much of an effect. Equally, I'm going to attack the top one. Equally, I believe ET workers are not driven purely by money, so I think that actors would do their best even without high wages. So I've smashed out this side and cancelled that and saying that's not much of an effect. Whereas the most important bit, so I'm saying this is the most important, whereas buying from local community would have a huge positive effect. Using the word in the question, effect up here, huge positive effect, as it will immediately raise brand awareness for their target market, which is necessary as a new startup. So it's built, it's not repeated, it's built on what we said before, and then with applications saying why that is so significant for ET. And then that's going to hit the highest marks. I've cancelled out the other 2 and I've strengthened my side. And all the time I was thinking about the resource. There we go. That draws us to an end. If we follow this advice, then we should be able to get the higher scores, the 9s, the A stars. For me, on this paper, everything comes down to reading the resource, knowing the exam technique like we've done it, and then reading the resource and feeling passionate. We need to think before we write in this paper. It's a real business scenario. There we go.